Hello and welcome to my morning note. Let's discuss Scottish independence today. It may never happen, but it is going to come to a vote next year. And as we've all learned from our experiences in the Eurozone over the last decade or so, such decisions can have long-lasting consequences. Now, of course, the Scots could quite easily and rationally vote for independence, even if it would cause them some degree of economic harm. But for today, we are just going to focus on the economic effects of Scottish independence. How are they going to do this? What is their currency going to be? With me now to discuss this is a Scottish economics professor from the LSE and fellow FT columnist, John Kay. John, thanks very much for joining me today. Let's start by taking a look at the chart that is often shows up in the debate in Scotland. This is Scottish GDP growth just over the last 6 years compared to the rest of the UK and to Norway, which obviously comes up a lot in the debate because it also has North Sea oil. Is Scotland a plausible independent economy?
Yes, it's a perfectly plausible independent economy. What you see from that chart is that Scotland doesn't look very different from the UK.
Right.
And actually, Scotland isn't very different from the UK. If we were looking at levels rather than trend over time, we'd see that the Scottish GDP per head is about the same, marginally less than that of the UK. And over the last 50 years, it's kind of varied between 90 and 100% of the UK level.
But if we break the UK down into regions, Scotland, as I understand it, is a wealthier region than most outside of London and the South East.
London and the South East is by far the wealthiest region of the UK, and Scotland is number 2.
Okay, now let's talk about the currency. Could Scotland meaningfully be independent if it continued with the pound sterling? How would it negotiate that position?
Well, if it was to continue with the pound sterling, there's two options of continuing with the pound sterling. One is what one might call the Ecuador or Montenegro option. Unilaterally you use it. And I just have to name the currencies that have adopted that option to see that unless you're desperate, you don't do that.
Okay.
The reasonable way to do it would be if you could negotiate a monetary union with the rest of the UK. And it's very hard to imagine that the UK would not, or the rest of the UK, would not want to have a lot of control over the Scottish budget. And if that's the case, then you start asking, what is the economic meaning of independence?
Okay, now I presume the euro, for political and practical reasons, isn't going to be an appealing option for the next few years. Would you agree with that?
Right, I think the euro isn't an appealing option. Firstly, the euro has quite enough problems of its own already without this one. And secondly, Scotland wouldn't even be close to meeting the Maastricht criteria on debt and deficit. But I think the EU is going to be a bit more insistent about enforcing than it has been in the past.
People do learn some lessons from history.
Yes.
On the subject of lessons from history, that leaves us with an independent Scottish currency. This is from your own column on this. We have a recent example when Czechoslovakia split up, and this is what's happened to one of the new korunas compared to the other in the wake of the splitting up of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
Couldn't this be rather ugly for the Scots if their currency suddenly weakens sharply against the pound?
It could be, and the Czech case is, as it were, the nearest an analogue, although it's not a very close analogue. And what happened in Czechoslovakia was that they decided, when the two parts of the country split, that they would defer what to do about the currency for a time. That actually lasted 3 weeks.
Yes, the capital markets basically told them, no, you've got to make up your mind.
The capital markets told them, no, you can't. And what happened actually was that the Slovak crown was immediately devalued by about between 10 and 15% against the Czech crown.
Now, is that something that the Scots it would obviously dent pride if that were to happen? Is that something that would meaningfully help the Scottish economy if it were to happen?
Economically, it wouldn't be a terrible thing for the Scottish economy, but I think the uncertainty created by having your own currency is quite a real problem. However, if you go back to the Czech case, the Slovak economy was much weaker than the Czech economy, so it really wasn't surprising that the Slovak crown went to a sharp discount. Not clear that would happen in Scotland. Still, it's quite hard to see the Scottish currency selling at a premium to the English one.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed. I think that gets the debate in Scotland into quite clear focus. Scottish independence probably does mean a separate Scottish currency. That may not be any bad thing. It means meaningful independence, but it does involve certain risks. Watch this space.